It is the middle of the night in Bidar, in the heart of the Deccan, and a foreign merchant is standing in the street looking straight up. Behind him, the governor's night watch rides past, 1,000 men in armor, every one carrying a torch. He is not watching them. He is looking at the stars, and he is doing arithmetic. He is trying to work out when Easter falls. He knows roughly where the stars sit in a Russian spring. He knows the Christian Easter lands 9 or 10 days before the Muslim festival, because he has checked. So he stands in a street in southern India and reads the sky like a ledger he only half remembers. He is not lost. He knows exactly where he is. He simply does not know what day it is, and has not known for 4 years, because his calendar was in a book, and the book was in a boat, and the boat is at the bottom of the Volga, 3,000 miles behind him. That is what a robbery actually costs, and it never appears on any invoice. This is the story of Afanasy Nikitin, and like everything on this channel, we are going to open it at the accounts page. Start with who he was, because nobody in this series has ever been smaller. He was not a king, not an ambassador, not sent by a company or a crown. Nikitin was not even a surname. He signs himself Afanasy, son of Nikita, which is how ordinary men were named. He was a merchant from Tver, a Russian principality with about 15 years left before Moscow swallowed it, and we know essentially nothing about him beyond what he wrote himself. Here is the first thing that tells you what kind of man he was. He opens his account with paperwork, a blessing at the cathedral, permission from the prince, a pass from Moscow, a clearance from the governor at Nizhny Novgorod, and from the keeper of the tolls. At every gate he notes that he was let through without hindrance. Men who list their customs clearances are men thinking about costs. Now, the detail most retellings get wrong. He was not going to India. His goods were meant for the markets of the Caucasus, which he already knew. India was not a plan. India was what happened after everything went wrong. Follow the line down the Volga, around the year 1468. He is traveling with a Russian embassy convoy, because protection is cheaper shared. Near the delta, the protection fails. He makes one sensible decision that night. He climbs out of his own small boat into the ambassador's larger one. His cargo stays behind in the small one. Then a shout comes across the water in Tatar. Do not run. They run. An arrow kills one of their men. 2 of the attackers go down, and then the venture ends, not in a battle, but on a fishing weir, a line of wooden stakes driven into the mud by men who fish there every day. The small boat catches on it and stops dead. Everything he owns is in that boat. They strip it where it sits. Then comes the cruelest detail in the story. The survivors are turned loose with nothing, and forbidden to travel back upstream, so no word can reach home. He asks the local ruler for help getting back to Russia. He is refused, and then his party divides. The men who still owned something in Russia went home. The men who owed money there scattered. He does not say which group he was in. He says only that he went onward. Do the arithmetic yourself. In his own words, because of the many misfortunes he went to India, for he had nothing to take back, no goods being left. So the road to India is not a voyage of discovery. It is a man trying to trade his way out of a hole. Down through Derbent and Baku, across the Caspian, through Persia, to the great port of Hormuz, where he notes the customs rate the way an accountant would, 1/10 of everything. And at Hormuz he works out the one trade that might save him. India in this century cannot breed war horses at scale. He says so flatly. No horses are bred in India, but oxen and buffaloes are. Meanwhile, the sultanates of the Deccan are permanently at war and will pay enormous money for cavalry. Horses are the great margin business of that entire ocean. At one annual fair near Bidar, he watches 20,000 of them change hands in 10 days. 20,000. And Afanasy Nikitin, a robbed man with borrowed nerve, buys one. One stallion, shipped across the Arabian Sea and walked inland to a hill fort called Junar. He writes down what that animal had cost him by the time it stood in Junar alive. 200 roubles. That is the entire business plan. One animal in a market that moves 20,000, 3,000 miles from anyone who has ever heard his name. And at Junar, in the middle of the monsoon, the local governor takes the horse. Then, discovering this foreigner is not a Muslim but a Russian Christian, he makes him an offer. Convert, and you get the horse back, and 1,000 pieces of gold on top. Refuse, and you lose the horse and pay 1,000 pieces of gold. 4 days to decide. a 2,000 gold swing on a question about God, and note the date he gives it, the eve of the feast of the Savior, the feast day of the cathedral he set out from in Tver, on the other side of the world. This episode survives in one source only, and that source is Nikitin, so hold it at arm's length. But what he says he did next is entirely in character. He does not pray his way out, he works his contacts. A Khorasanian merchant he knows rides into town, and Nikitin, in his own word, humbly begged him. The man rides up to the fort and talks the governor down and gets the horse back. He was saved by the only asset the Volga could not take. He knew people. And afterwards, he writes a line to his countrymen that is not pious at all. It is a warning from a man who has done the sums. If you are going to the land of India, he says, leave your faith at home. He reaches Bidar, the capital, and here the account becomes something no other document of that century gives us. Because Nikitin is broke, nobody is hosting him, and nobody is showing him the polished version. So he sees both halves of the country at once. The nobles, he writes, are rich and live in luxury, carried in silver litters behind 20 horses in golden harness, and the people of the countryside are very poor. That sentence is why historians still read him. He was, as one editor put it, the only traveler of his time who saw the shady side of the opulence. And in that same city stands the perfect mirror of his own life. The chief minister of the Deccan had also arrived as a foreign merchant with nothing but languages and an accent, and is now titled Prince of the Merchants and effectively runs the state. Nikitin inventories his household like a clerk. 2,000 horses in the stables, 1,000 of them saddled and standing ready day and night, 100 elephants, 2 foreign merchants, both self-made, in one city. One has 2,000 horses, the other has one and has been feeding it for a year. He records arriving in Bidar in November. He records selling the stallion on Christmas Day for 68 futuns after feeding it for a year. And here the audit hits a wall, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. He bought that colt for 200 roubles. He sold it for 68 futuns. Those are 2 different currencies, one Russian and one Indian, and there is no clean rate to convert between them across that distance and that century. So the most basic question you can ask about this entire venture, whether the man actually made money, cannot be settled out of his own ledger. He wrote down both numbers. He simply never left us the arithmetic. What we can say is that nothing in what follows reads like a man who got rich. So let us settle the accounts, the way this channel always does. Who paid, what did it cost, and what came back? Who paid is the shortest entry in the history of this series. He did. No state funding, no charter, no company, no investor named anywhere. Possibly he carried goods on credit, which is what one leading scholar argues, and which would mean debt bondage waiting at home if he came back empty-handed. Another reading says it was simply his own small capital. We cannot settle it. What we can say is that whoever paid, nobody ever replaced it. What it cost is the longest entry, 6 years. His entire opening stock, taken at the river mouth. His books, which cost him the most and cost him the longest. 200 roubles and a year of feed on a single horse. One of his men shot dead on the river. 4 more led away captive. The ambassador he set out following, later killed by an arrow near Kazan. 4 Easters kept by guesswork. A second name to live under. He was robbed at the start and robbed again near the end. And on the last leg, he was borrowing a single gold coin to buy food. And finally, his life. As for what came back, no fortune, and no sign of one anywhere in the document. What came back was a notebook, and he did not even carry it home himself. So, the verdict. Was it worth it? And to whom? Not to him. That has to be said plainly, because this channel does not pretend that suffering is automatically an investment. He lost his cargo, his savings, his years, his certainty about his own faith, and, finally, his life. Whatever the horse fetched, it did not amount to a fortune, and it did not get him home. But look at what the failure produced. Every other visitor to a court like that one arrives funded, hosted, and flattered, and writes down the palace. Nikitin arrived with nothing, was hosted by nobody, and therefore wrote down the country. The poverty he recorded is visible to us precisely because he shared it. His ruin is the reason the document is honest, and he was there early. He stood in the Deccan roughly 27 years before Portuguese ships reached the Indian coast. Now, be careful here, because the internet inflates this. He was not the first European to see India. What he was the first Russian we know of to reach India and write it down, and one of very few outsiders of any nation that century to leave a first-hand record of the Deccan. Meanwhile, the mythology has done rather well for itself. There is a bronze statue of him at Tareekh, a monument on the Indian coast, an undersea mountain in the Indian Ocean, an asteroid, a commemorative coin, a film that ran at Cannes, and a brand of beer with his face on the label. A man who almost certainly died insolvent is now a beverage. He reached the Crimea in the autumn of 1474, went overland, and died somewhere near Smolensk, not on Russian soil, still short of the border and well short of Tver. Nobody recorded how. Other merchants picked up his notebooks and carried them the rest of the way to a secretary of the Grand Prince in Moscow. And that man did something quietly magnificent. He tried to verify the story. He checked the ambassador and found he was dead too. He could not establish what year Nikitin left, what year he returned, or what year he died. So he wrote down, in the margin of history, exactly what he had failed to find out, and filed the document anyway. An official who could not close a file is the only reason we have any of this. The robbery took his cargo, the road took his years, the last leg took his life, and the only thing that ever completed the journey was the notebook, carried by strangers, filed by a bureaucrat, and still being read 5.5 centuries later. The ledger never balanced. It was still worth keeping. Follow the traveler, follow the receipts. Tareekh ka Hisaab. Hisaab abhi baki hai.